this is actually something that I've been thinking about a lot recently is, I've been in the hypertrophy box for a really long time. The last 2 years is just all hypertrophy.
Right.
And before that, like this was, 5 or 6 years ago, I was, the first thing that got me into fitness was CrossFit.
Okay.
So I kind of have a negative feeling towards these certain training styles that just mix a ton of random shit together.
Right.
So I kind of, there's a part of me that, I followed. There's a part of me that enjoyed that and saw that there could be benefits from that style of training, but I also saw the bullshit of CrossFit and the way they implement it. And that's what I want to get into is, programming to be a superhuman in all aspects, not just, hey, I want to build as much muscle as possible. I also want to be able to run and jump and be strong and powerful. So that's what I wanted to get into is like, how do we avoid, the pitfalls of CrossFit and actually program for hybrid athleticism and what your weekly routine could look like?
Well, I think for starters, and this is partly just kind of ironic, I think if you were to look, and I don't know this for certain because I don't train with CrossFitters or anything like that, but I have a strong feeling that if you were to look at the people that are the best CrossFitters, they're not really doing CrossFit. If I had to hazard a crazy guess, they're probably training similar to how I would recommend training, similar to how I train, similar to how I have other people train. There's almost certainly a large focus on building a large base of strength for starters, just traditional strength training. Beyond that, obviously there has to be a heavy focus on the Olympic lifts. And then beyond that, I would imagine that there's a lot of just structured cardio. Maybe not just, jogging on a treadmill or whatever you would see in the bodybuilding realm typically, but a variety of different modalities and structured in a progressive fashion, as opposed to kind of what you were just lamenting, the chaotic nature of CrossFit as you would see it if you went to a CrossFit box or if you were to just follow the CrossFit WODs that you see posted on the internet. There's, some value in that to a point. I mean, if it gets somebody who wasn't just going to be sitting on their ass, if it gets them moving, that's good. That's better than nothing. But it's only going to take you so far. And it is haphazard and you have the potential for getting hurt or whatever. So I think for starters, just kind of creating that designation in your head is a good place to be. As far as going like the hybrid route, like what I've sort of done myself, especially in recent years. Again, I think it kind of is going to depend on the training history. You do have to create you have to separate, say, if you're dealing with somebody who has played a sport or something like that for their whole life versus someone who hasn't, because there's going to be distinctions there between what they can do coming into things, kind of. But as a general rule, just first and foremost, in my opinion, the most important aspect is laying down a foundation of strength, because you can kind of build everything off of that as you move along. So that's kind of how I start things off. And I have hybrid programs. I've got free one on my YouTube channel, and I have kind of my ultimate performance manual. If you've seen that, it's kind of that similar concept. But I don't tell somebody who has no experience to start there. I don't think that's the starting point. I mean, you could, but I don't think it's going to lend itself to the optimal results in the long run, basically. So again, a foundation of strength is kind of the starting point, and then you build off of that. Once you've got some strength laid down, you got some muscle built up, then you can kind of take that, and I assume you're at that point, at least in that realm. I haven't seen your footage or your training footage or anything like that. But once you kind of get to that point, intermediate status, whatever you want to call it, then you can segue out. You can start to incorporate a whole bunch of different stuff, whatever really that you want to do. At that point, it would be dependent kind of on what direction you wanted to go in particular. If you just wanted kind of everything, kind of the kitchen sink approach, you could make it work at that point too. Just, run different running modalities, jumping, exercises. You can start looking at plyos, power movements. So you can start focusing on the Olympic lifts, the kettlebell swings, like you mentioned in the email. So just anything at that point. And again, it's going to be kind of where do you specifically want to go? And then you pick a goal, pick maybe 1 or 2 goals. This is kind of how I like to do it. Aim towards them, work towards them, and then stop. Once you get either where you want to be or close to where you want to be, then focus on something else. And what you get is you retain, you don't lose everything. Even if I was doing sprints in 2021. I did a lot of sprinting.
Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah. So I got faster. I'm 34 now. I'm faster than I had ever been in my life. And I wasn't a slouch before that. People who played sports with me will tell you I wasn't slow, but like faster than I've ever been at age 34. And I guarantee you now I haven't sprinted in like 3 months, basically. I'm going to have retained a fair bit of that extra speed that I added, but now I can take it out. I can segue into other things. And that's kind of what I've started doing. So that's how I like to do it. You do it kind of cyclically. So I'll probably go back to sprinting again at some point in the future. And I've done the same kind of thing with vertical jumping. I peaked my vertical jump a few years ago, and I don't know, maybe this year I'll do some more conditioning based goals, whatever. Though I never am like, there are periods where I'll do like multiple things at once, several things at once. But in general, I like to kind of focus here, focus there, and then move along. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Well, with CrossFit, I felt like I beat myself up because I didn't have that base.
Right. And that's,
I didn't focus on, just learning how to, with CrossFit, everything's so fast paced, and they kind of just throw newbies into these, I wouldn't necessarily say they're inherently dangerous, the movements, but it's the fact that these people, like when I started, I was doing these crazy like box jumps and all this stuff that, I hadn't built up strength. And now that I've done, I actually developed a lot of I was having like chronic back pain issues and stuff.
Yeah.
And when I switched over to just focusing on bodybuilding movements, building my base, that's when I started to fix a lot of those issues.
Well, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah. I'm kind of wondering now so I was focusing just on hypertrophy.
Okay.
And now I'm starting to, I'm going for runs around the block, doing a lot of trail running and just getting more, movement, just natural movements. And even cardio was something I kind of put out of the way for a while. Yeah. So I've implemented the cardio, and I do actually want to start developing, strength. So maybe, messing around with lower rep ranges and stuff like that. Like, so incorporating some more strength training. But then I'm also interested in, hey, I remember I one thing in particular I really liked was, kettlebell swings and kettlebell training. But again, back then I didn't have my base. So I'm wondering how it would affect me now.
Give it a shot. With me, the reason why I came up with that little like T handle that you've probably seen me use for the swings is because aside from the fact that it would be, I have the garage gym. So aside from the fact that it would be a little impractical to have a bunch of kettlebells, they're just the jumps from one to the other. It's too much. So you'll go from using like a 50-pound kettlebell, and then the next option is like 75 or 100 or whatever. So you can't really get nice jumps with it, nice weight jumps with it. And they're often too light also. So if you're going to a gym, you're never really going to run into kettlebells that will last you for a long time in terms of what I would consider to be productive swinging. So kind of what I'm getting at is I think where most people go wrong is they go too light with the swing. So they're basically, if you're swinging a 50-pound kettlebell around, it's only a matter of weeks before you can swing the damn thing over your head and throw it away if you were to let go of it, Yeah.
That's what I have. I have just a 50-pound kettlebell laying around. I swing it around, and it's a good conditioning tool, but you're not necessarily building, power.
Right. And I've gone on the other end of the spectrum. I've gone too heavy, right? I've put 300 pounds on the thing, and I've swung it around, and it's cool, but I go back and I look at the footage, and I'm like, well, I wasn't really getting as much height as even I would have liked. And obviously I'm coming from a perspective of saying most people are probably swinging too high. So I've kind of lately settled myself into a middle ground, and honestly, I might push it back up into that excessively heavy realm again in the future. But I've stick mostly in the middle ground, at least in recent history. And I think that's probably going to be kind of the sweet spot. Say you're swinging, you're putting a given is you're putting max effort into every swing, right? So I think a sweet spot is going to be somewhere between like chest height, belly button height, which honestly ends up being similar to the recommendation I would give you for like a snatch grip high pull. If you've seen me do anything like that too, if you've seen me do that exercise. Yeah. I think that's going to be the realm where you're going to be building some strength in the posterior chain muscles, but mostly I like it for the ideas of power and for resilience, because you're rhythmically, you're eating like massive eccentric forces when you pull back. Oh, you got 200 pounds on the thing. That's a lot of impact that you have to absorb, and you're doing that repeatedly. So that in a stretched position on the hamstrings. So that's a good way to help build up resilience in those muscles, along with the obvious power. If you're heave-hoeing with 250 pounds, that's not anything to sneeze at, you know?
What would you say as far as, I don't know. When it comes to kettlebell training, I don't know a lot of resources to go. Like, I don't really know many people that, what's your recommendation on how heavy you should go compared to, let's say, like your ratio to like your deadlift or something like, I don't know. Is that how you would
typically how I get people started? I use the deadlift ratio for a lot of things, or squat ratio. So with the deadlift, let's take thought real quick. Usually I think I would have you start around 20%, something pretty conservative, maybe 15, even
20% of your 1 rep max.
Your 1 rep max conventional. You get some variability. Like I got a lot of guys who I train who can deadlift 400, we'll say. And you'll see a lot of variability between, I'll throw 80 pounds on it. That's 20%. And they'll get tossed all over the place, or they can't get good height with it. But another guy might need to start at 25 or even 30. So you'll see some variability, but that's a pretty good rule of thumb. You can tinker with it from there once you kind of see how they react to it, once you see how you react to it. And then once you have a zone where you can kind of get that good height, about chest height, 10 to 12 reps per set is the sweet spot, I think. Maybe a little higher, maybe 15. Because it's going to be higher than normal power building movements because of the rhythmic nature of it, just in general, higher reps, I mean, but I wouldn't go over 15. So 10 to 12, majority of the time, I usually stick with about 3 to 4 sets. And then you can do that 1 to 2 times per week. And then from there, once you've got yourself in that sweet spot, if you have the T handle, you can put 5 or 10 pounds on it every 2 to 3 weeks. And you can run that for several months, honestly, and you'll see big improvements.
Yeah, I can only imagine how you would adapt to that as you get heavier and heavier with the kettlebell swings.
Yeah, no, it's fun stuff. It's different. I didn't, so like last 2020 or 2021, I think 2020, I didn't deadlift at all. I was only doing the swings, and that was where I got to the point where I was doing the ones that I would tell you were a little too heavy. So I had gotten up to 300 pounds, about 10 reps, something like that. Again, not swinging it very high, but I'm moving through a decent range of motion with the through the hip hinge, through a decent range of motion. So my hamstrings are getting stretched. I'm getting a nice hip extension at the top, and no deadlifting at all. I pulled 520 just on a whim, pretty easily. I probably had about 20 to 30 pounds in the tank. So that sits up around what my best ever conventional deadlift was when I was preparing for powerlifting meets. So
you're saying that the kettlebell swing actually kept your deadlift strength intact?
That is what I'm postulating. Yes.
Wow.
I don't know what else it would have been. So
yeah, that's crazy. So you weren't doing any deadlifts. Let's say a guy was mostly focused on bodybuilding style training. Okay. And he wanted to add some, kettlebell swings or some of that kind of conditioning. What would it look like? So you didn't do deadlifts. Were you just putting the kettlebell swing where you would put your deadlift kind of thing?
Man, I honestly can't remember what exactly I was doing at that time. I think so. I was doing 2 times a week lower body. I think I was just doing the swings once a week. And I think the main thing I was focusing on, I think, was just zombie squat, front squatting, essentially. So it wouldn't have been where if I was sitting up a traditional strength program or a traditional powerlifting program, it wouldn't have been where that was, because I would have I would start with the power movement. So I'd start with the swings and then I would move into the front squats, like that kind of thing. If it was replacing the deadlift, it would have just been in that main strength slot instead. A little bit different.
Yeah, one thing I'm always worried about is, recovering from kettlebell swings, or does it take a lot? Does it take a lot? Like, you want to plan that out. You wouldn't want to do kettlebell swings right before a leg day, or.
Oh, no. I would do them the same day. I mean, it would be a good, if you were interested strictly in hypertrophy, it probably not something you need to be doing, to be honest. But if you want to at least hedge your bets for the future, that you might want to kind of branch out into other endeavors, I would say kick off the lower body session with it, kick off the leg day with that movement. Just 3 sets, maybe 4. And once you're in that sweet spot, you'll kind of it not hurts, but it's tough at first, but you adjust to it pretty quickly. So honestly, one of the main things I notice, I do get, if I haven't done them in a while, my hamstrings will get pretty sore, but the upper back, it feels like it got hit by a freaking freight train when you wake up the next day. And I'm always taken aback by it. I'm like, oh, what did I do yesterday? I remember. It's those damn swings.
Yeah. Well, initially my gut instinct was to put it after my leg day.
Okay. Like the next day, or like,
no, like just so you do like your main, deadlift, squat, whatever.
Okay. Like at the end of the workout.
I usually do like a posterior chain focused compound, then a squat, and then I do like some sort of unilateral exercise, and then maybe I'll hit calves. And then I was like, oh, maybe after that I could hit some kettlebell swings.
So the problem with something like that would be there's a lot of stability. You have to be able to stabilize that weight that's pulling you forward, pulling you backwards.
Yeah.
If your quads are trashed, you are going to have a harder time staying balanced. If your calves are really tired from a bunch of calf raises, you're probably going to have a lot harder of a time keeping your balance, keeping ideal balance to really get your power into the implement. So I would say start with it first. It might hinder you a little bit initially. You might find that your training weights drop down a little bit, but I don't think that'll be a permanent feature. I think once you kind of acclimate to the movement after a few weeks, it wouldn't really be a big deal.
As far as intensity goes, this is another thing I've been thinking about, because one thing I like to do with my bodybuilding style training is I keep my volume low on the lower end, but I just really try to ramp up the intensity, like really like close to failure on each set.
Okay.
But when it comes to kettlebell training, you probably don't want to, you don't want to go to failure swinging a kettlebell. Or what does that look like exactly when it comes to intensity?
For me, it's me getting thrown on my ass on the floor, which has happened before. No, I don't think there's really a failure in terms of that. I mean,
when it comes, it's kind of it's a different thing,
it's mainly, I would just be using, what I do is I use the swing height and kind of my movement, how my body is moving as the gauge. If I'm moving well, if I'm one thing I'll start to do, or one thing I've noticed, if I start getting a little too heavy, I kind of start chopping the hinge. So my body doesn't want me to go as deep into the hinge.
I actually noticed that when I was watching the videos, like the heavier you got, your range of motion just kept getting lower and lower, because just the physics of it, you can't really.
Well, eventually it's almost double your body weight. It's hard. But so that's kind of one of the gauges that I use. If I'm cutting the hinge too much, I'm not really getting the nice big stretch in the hamstrings anymore. That's kind of my first warning sign. And then second to that is the height itself, the height of the swing itself, how high I'm pulling the implement.
And
go ahead.
Sorry, and you've made videos on proper kettlebell form. I think I watched one of them.
I can't remember. I made one video like a long time before I even had really any subscribers on my YouTube channel. I called it "Everything There Is to Know About Kettlebell Swinging." I guess I probably went over the mechanics of it, and honestly, my opinions on the mechanics of it may have changed since then because that video is so old. I truly can't remember.
Yeah, because it is a pretty technical movement. A lot of people use their shoulders. They like pull up the swing.
Yeah.
And when I'm doing it, my arms are doing no work at all.
Right.
Really
And that's how I like to think of it. Just as same with like what people will tell you with the Olympic lifts. The arms are just hooks that connect you to the bar.
Yeah.
So they shouldn't actually be pulling. And I do pretty well with that on the kettlebell swing. On the Olympic lifts, I'm terrible. I pull a lot with my arms.
Yeah. Well, that's actually something else I want to get into is I remember when I was doing more of the kettlebell work, they had a lot of, snatch and press and all those different kettlebell moves. How would that with someone who doesn't have any, Olympic, I don't want to be an Olympic lifter. It's not my, an aspiration of mine.
In terms of the kettlebell specifically, or just in terms
of what I'm saying is just in terms, like, I don't care what implement I use. I just want to know what I'm going to get out of it. Right. I don't have any.
For me, the way I try to simplify those lifts. So basically you gotta clean and jerk, right? So you're pulling the bar off the floor, you pull it as high as you can, and you catch it in a deep squat position, in a deep front squat position.
Yeah.
And then you stand up with it. So that's called a full clean, or just a clean.
Yeah.
So then you have the designation of there being a power clean. A power clean would be you pull the bar off the floor, you explode, and then you catch it in as shallow of a squat as possible. So you're attempting to pull the bar as high as you can so that you don't have to squat very deep. And then in Olympic lifting circles, they kind of create the cutoff between, did you catch the bar at parallel or higher is power? Did you catch it parallel or lower is not power anymore. So that's kind of how they create that cutoff. In athletic training circles, performance training circles, the goal would just be to pull it as high as you can. So then the final piece to that puzzle is the hang. So one of the hardest parts, at least for me, was you have to get the bar into a very precise spot on the thigh to really be able to explode into it. So one of the hardest parts is mastering the mechanics of picking the bar up off the floor, getting it over the knees, and then getting it situated into that correct spot every single time so that you can really explode into it and get good power into the bar. So I like to bypass that portion by just having people do the lift from the hang, pick the bar up off the floor, and then set the lift up from the top down instead of from the bottom up. So you do that. You combine the hang aspect with the power aspect, and suddenly you've taken a very, very technical lift, a clean, and then a full snatch is literally probably the most technical thing you can do in the gym. You've taken that and you've really distilled it down into something that is just a lot more simple, a lot simpler. And you can really build up from there. It's for me, the snatch, the hang power snatch feels very natural. I just kind of heave into the bar and it's nice. It's smooth. I really feel like I can go at it. For most people, I think doing the hang power clean is probably going to be where they're really going to feel like they're getting the most out of it. But if you can take something like that, I mean, I have people start off, just a couple weeks of that, practicing the hang power versions, especially the clean, and they're going at it, man. They feel confident, they feel comfortable, and you can really build from there. And then at that point, if they wanted to, you can start segueing into more difficult variations. If they want to learn how to connect it to the floor, that would kind of be the next step, in my opinion. And then if they want to do the full lift, then I would attach the squat portion after that. Now, I'm not an Olympic lifting guy. I'm not an Olympic lifting coach. I don't proclaim to be. But just for people who have that specific desire, that's kind of how I would go about it. But where performance is concerned, just general power and athleticism, the hang power versions are all you need. You're taking all the benefits that you're going to get from those lifts, and you're getting them in a much simpler version, a modified, simple version of the lift.
Now, one thing I'm curious about is doing those movements with kettlebells as opposed to a barbell. That's something I did in the past, and I'm wondering, would you get the same benefit out of it? Than just weight? I guess they're not as.
I think it depends. I don't know. So I have that T handle. I can't really clean it. I can't really snatch it. I kind of wish I could, at least for no other reason than to say,
you tried it.
When I think of this. So maybe not. Again, you would run into very similar issues as what I was saying with the swing. Even if you have access to a full set of kettlebells, you're running into very large weight jumps, and that could be very problematic with a snatch. It can be very problematic with a clean. One thing, an analogy that I heard many years ago with the Olympic lifts was that it's like jumping from rooftop to rooftop. So you have to be fully committed, because you either make it or you don't, right? But if we know that you can jump 6 feet and all of a sudden I tell you, okay, the next rooftop is 14 feet, you're probably not going to make it. It's the same thing with those kettlebells. If you're taking these huge jumps, it's going to be really problematic. So that would probably be the biggest issue, in my opinion, even if you had access to a full set of kettlebells. But if you had access to ones that worked for you, you're still exploding into the implement. You're still getting that powerful hip extension. I don't see any reason why you wouldn't get the benefits.
It's more just like the practicality of it.
Like practicality. One thing I do like, and you may have seen on my YouTube channel or my Instagram before, the dumbbell. I'll do a 1-arm power snatch with a dumbbell.
I've done that before.
Similar concept as you get with a kettlebell. In my opinion, it's probably smoother. It's probably more natural, because with the kettlebell, you have that like the aspect of it rotating, and kind of some people get hit in the wrist, but you don't have that with the dumbbell. But that'd be a similar concept. That's just a nice little variation. But again, it's not that one. It wouldn't really replace the barbell versions, at least not in my opinion, because sorry, my computer's kind of humming here.
All good.
It wouldn't really replace the barbell versions, because you kind of run into the issue of hitting a ceiling, which happened to me. So like, whereas you can kind of progress the barbell versions for a longer period of time, you'll run into more walls that are more difficult to break through when you're using those smaller modalities. And that's not to say they don't have value, but as with most things in the weight training game, there's more value to combining modalities or using all the modalities at your disposal over time, rather than just pigeonholing yourself into one.
Mm-hmm. Well, this has got me thinking, there's the training for, specificity, like training for specifically what you want.
Right.
But then I'm wondering how all of these different things blend into one another. If you get extremely like you said, you got extremely powerful with the swing, and then you still maintained your deadlift. There's probably like, have you noticed as you've gotten more, like you've gained more explosive power, and then you've gone into a more hypertrophy focused movement, that there's been a benefit there?
Oh yeah, for sure. And that's kind of something that I'm always harping on. I think that a lot of people in a lot of my videos, I think that a lot of people miss that what I'm saying is take the strength, take the power that you can build, and then use that foundation, lean on it, go segue into other endeavors, segue into whatever you want to do. And you'll find that you are much more, your baseline level of functionality is a lot higher. So you're able to get a lot more done. The things that you do are a lot more productive when you have a solid base of strength to lean on. And sure, I've noticed that with hypertrophy work. I would tell you that up to basically this past 6 months, I hadn't really done what I would consider to be true hypertrophy work in the last decade, or basically in the entire time I've really lifted weights. I've only really focused on with the end game of strength always being the primary factor. And I've moved a little bit away from that. I still am doing things to maintain my strength, but I'm not really putting a premium on building it. I am, however, logging a lot more reps. I am working in those traditional hypertrophy ranges. And I've gained like 10, 15 pounds in the last year and a half, 2 years. So
awesome. Yeah. Another thing, I saw you doing the Jefferson curl in one of your videos, and you talk about mobility and stuff like that a little bit. I used to do mobility a lot, but I don't really do any of that kind of stuff anymore. And I'm curious, what do you think? I think a lot of people just do mobility drills, but they don't really have any aim. It's like, why? Like, do you need to be more mobile in that position? Like, I have all the mobility I need for what I want to do.
If you do, then more power to you, man. I don't think there's any reason to necessarily do things. Well, and kind of what you were getting at, aimlessness with mobility work, it isn't really going to accomplish anything. I think you should, if you have problem areas, like I personally have, because I've had some hip issues, target those problem areas, right? And when you do that, that's where you kind of notice the benefits. And you do have to be consistent with it is the other thing, the other big thing that I think most people don't do. I don't think stretching really does all that much unless you're doing it 3, 4, 5 times per week. So it's got to be targeted. It's got to be targeted to what matters to you as an individual, and it's got to be done consistently. Beyond that, I don't think you're going to get anything out of just, okay, I just finished my bench press today, so now I'm going to stretch my arm a couple times.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, for sure. Well, I'm curious. Can you clarify what you mean by hip issues? Do you mean hip pain or just like hip tightness?
So I tore my labrum on the left hip. That was about 2014. I
actually saw that video. You squatted with a torn labrum.
I did. Actually, for probably about six to 10 months, the thing was torn, and I was still going.
Holy shit!
Yeah. So it's an interesting injury. You kind of start off. It doesn't impact you all that much, and then it kind of crescendos over time until you get to a point where you can't really do much with the hip. So I got to that point. That was when I had the surgery. I didn't really know anything about it. At the time, I wasn't very educated on the subject. And actually, it's kind of a blessing in disguise for me because it led me down some rabbit holes. I got to meet a lot of physical therapists. I got to meet an orthopedic surgeon who was very helpful. So it led me down a lot of rehab rabbit holes, essentially. And it kind of added to my knowledge base, ultimately. But so I tore the labrum. It got real messed up. And because I squatted with it torn like that for so long, I do actually have mild osteoarthritis in that left hip. Doesn't really impact me, but that's now it doesn't really impact me because of the adjustments that I've made. And part of that adjustment has been focusing on mobility drills for the hips specifically, which is kind of what I'm saying, like in terms of targeting areas that may be problematic for you. If I didn't have hip issues, if I didn't have that issue, I probably wouldn't need to do some of the stuff that I do. Mm-hmm. At least as far as maintaining the baseline level of functionality that I want to be able to maintain, and being able to do the things that I want to be able to do without having any pain or issues. Because I've had my hips be really, really stiff before I kind of started doing some of the things that I've implemented recently. So,
mm-hmm. Yeah. And what would you recommend for like people with back issues, like the Jefferson curl, like the whole like spinal flexion debate? I'm totally for, like, if your spine can move that way, it's probably healthy to move that way.
I would agree with that.
There's a lot of people who think, and I'm not a scientist, and if you're deadlifting with like a super rounded back and you're not used to it, that might be an issue. But I think that any position that you slowly build up to, you can probably do safely.
Yes. Anything you can slowly build up to is probably not going to be a huge deal. The thing with the back is, there's a whole bunch of different causes of back pain. You might have 10 people with back pain. They might all have a different reason for their back pain. So here, I'll hit you with another one. So I have what's called spondylolisthesis in my lower back at L5-S1. So when I was a kid, there's like a bone. I can't remember the name of it. You break it, and if you don't know that you broke the bone, they can't do anything about it after the fact. They can put you in a brace if you know that you broke it, and it can prevent this condition from occurring. The condition is the vertebrae actually shifts forward. So my L5 vertebrae is instead of sitting like this on the S1, it's like this. So it's shifted forward, essentially putting me into a position where the lower back is chronically like stretched. So I've had some lower back tightness the condition can also lead to sciatic issues down the road if it progresses. Mine is stable, so should not shift further. But for me, the biggest thing there has been focusing on some of those core stability exercises. So planking variations, and just progressing that up into more difficult and more difficult variations. Because that creates a situation where your body is naturally able to counter that forward shifting force, because the abdominal muscles here they do the opposite.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's a good message for people to hear, because I think a lot of people are like, oh no, my body's broken, I can't do anything.
Yeah, my body is broken, but I can do everything, you know, and that's
Yeah.
kind of how I see it. And I've always had that sort of mentality, and I try to not pass not the mentality of, oh, you should break your body, but the mentality of it, still try to do whatever you can do regardless of how your body's feeling. I've tried to pass that on to people, or not regardless of how your body is feeling, but like, you know, just because you've acquired a certain injury doesn't mean it's a death sentence. That kind of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. I was talking about CrossFit and how I kind of left a bad taste in my mouth. Well, another thing that left a bad taste in my mouth when I was struggling with back pain was like the whole like correctional exercises, like correction exercises. There's so much bullshit there, and so many people just selling absolute horseshit. And for me now, I'm very skeptical when someone's like, do this. And like, for me, it's like, okay, my low back gives me issues. It's usually this is like a few years ago. Usually my back is pretty damn good now. Every once in a while it's usually the same spot, just on the right side of my lower to mid back. Bugs me every once in a while, but it's very subtle now. And just doing normal movements like straight leg deadlifts and back extensions, like that seems to have done the best. Not this gimmicky, whatever gimmicky correctional exercise. And there's people like knees over toes guy who seems to have a lot of bulletproofing exercises, and his seem to be logical. And I agree with a lot of what he says. And I'm kind of curious, like, what's your take on bulletproofing and correctional exercises and all that kind of stuff?
I think that the difference between the knees over toes guy and a lot of those the other correctional experts, whatever you want to call them,
correctional experts.
So he's still like, again, I think that a lot of people must have knee issues, because that's really helped. That message has really blown him up. Again, I think that the idea of it being targeted, these movements being targeted to the area that is problematic for you as an individual, is going to be important. But I think one of the big differences between him and a lot of the other guys is he's still basically advocating people to do the normal the movement patterns that we all do as people in the gym, as weight trainers. He's just encouraging you to take them down to a level where you're not experiencing pain, and then move those joints through a full range of motion all the time, and then progress it up slowly from there. Whereas with a lot of the movement experts, the guys you're calling gimmicky, that's what it is. It's gimmicky. They're not, a lot of them aren't telling you to do these sorts of things. They're not advocating for you to just do a squat through a full range of motion with good control and regress it to a level you can do without pain. That's really his main message. They're telling you to do, I don't know, man, just stand on one leg and close your eyes and don't fall over while you balance for a minute. Like there's a big difference between those sorts of things. And I can really get behind the former as compared to the latter,
Absolutely. Like even just like the tibia raise and stuff like that, those things that you don't think about, you're like, oh yeah, that makes sense. Like, why? A lot of the stuff well, one thing in particular is if you have an issue in an area, like say your hip flexors give you an issue, usually strengthening them. Well, in my case, every time I've had an issue somewhere, strengthening the area has helped me.
That was initially for me. So before I got into weight training, I used to have a lot of knee problems, actually, just from playing sports. So then I started squatting when I discovered the weight room, and that magically cured my knee issues. I don't have knee problems anymore. That happened actually very, very quickly. And that was way before knees over toes guy was on social media. I mean, that was before Instagram existed. So I didn't even, I was squatting through relatively full range of motion. I always have, but not quite as much as he has advocated these days. But then obviously that started to lead to my other issues down the road, that in part, I'm not blaming the exercises, that I'm blaming more my ignorance and how I implemented things is what led to my hip issues, just for example. I can't remember the question.
Well, I'm kind of curious, like what would you say are what led to your injury?
My injury?
Your ignorance and lack of, like what did you do to like lead to your injury? It wasn't the movement itself, but it was just how you were programming it.
Well, so I played tennis for a lot of years, so there's a lot of rotation and a lot of it in one direction. So I mean, you have two directions you can swing from, but I was very dominant on one side, so I always tried to get to swing from that one side. So half of my body was stronger than the other half of my body, essentially. And I took that into bilateral movements, and then I just kept building. And then I started doing squat every day program, but I was like maxing the squat out every day. I did that for 3 months, like 90 consecutive days, that kind of thing. So I'm getting to a point where, a lot of people, in my experience, they want to quit a little bit too soon. I was ignoring everything, pushing through past above and beyond pain levels that you shouldn't be ignoring. I would say kind of try to find the middle ground, really. But so basically what I'm getting at is it was my own ignorance of my kind of pre-existing conditions, for lack of a better word, coupled with just stupidity.
Yeah, there is a balance. It's a delicate balance too when you think about, maybe some people are too obsessed with recovery and they take one extra day off when they really didn't need to. And then you have like the other side of the spectrum where they needed to take a day off.
Yeah.
Especially when one thing that I kind of thought about in the beginning of this conversation is, you're programming all these different modalities, strength, power, cardiovascular training. How do you what does your week look like? How many days off do you have? Because for me, could I do like an upper lower hypertrophy, Monday, Tuesday, and then Wednesday hit some kettlebell swings and some running, and then just go right back into Thursday, upper body hypertrophy, and then maybe just take a Sunday off. Do you know what I'm saying? I don't know how to fit this all in a week.
I've done that in the past, going up at least to 6 times per week of training. The way I would do it at those times, I would kind of have a primary upper body, a primary lower body, a secondary upper, a secondary lower. So what you would typically see in a 4-day type of upper lower split. And then along with that, I would add in whatever additional stuff I wanted to work on. So if it was a conditioning goal, it might be running. If it was a vertical jump, then it might be the jump work. If it's loaded carries, I'll throw those in somewhere else or what. So you'll kind of get 4 main workouts and then 2 just kind of feeder workouts, just peppered in on the other day. And so you just end up with basically 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3 as your weekly microcycle. And then rest on Sunday and then start the process over. In recent history, I've condensed it a little bit more. So right now I'm just doing 4 days per week. That's what I was doing all of last year as well, just 4 days per week. So last year, just for example, to give you an idea of how to blend things, since I wanted to run faster, I started every lower body workout with a sprint variation of some sort. So I would do that. That's why I was running out in the street, because I wanted everybody makes fun of you for that, but whatever. So I wanted to be able to combine that and then easily move into the weight room work. I only have so many hours in a day to devote to it. So I can't be driving to the track every day, come back home, and then still hit the weights. So I wanted to just be able to knock that stuff out and then go immediately into the gym and do my weight room work. So it would basically be a typical day would have just been 3 to 5 sets on those sprints, whatever I was doing that day. And then go into the gym, knock out a power movement of some sort, a power clean, a high pull, something like that. And then a strength movement, so a squat or a deadlift, and then something easy, something small, maybe something for my hips, something for my glutes, something a little more isolated. That's
interesting. I've never really heard or seen someone program that way. Doing a sprint and then going into your lower body routine. What specifically, I've always been kind of under the impression that you're supposed to do your more cardio focused stuff at the end of a workout, especially if it's powerful. But
that's how I would do it if it was cardio. But since it was I wanted to be fresh so I could run as fast as possible.
Yeah, that makes sense.
There. So I'll do that too, though. So I'll do I'll do whatever the workout is, whatever the program weight room work is, and then I'll go and I'll run 800 meters, or I'll I'll carry something for 400 to 800 meters. So like if it was an 800-meter run, I would just try to do it as fast as possible. If it's carries, we'll say I want to get a particular distance in total. I'll walk. I'll rest as much as I need to. Just I'll go as far as I can. I'll take a break. I'll rest a few seconds and I'll go again. So basically just trying to do it as quickly as I can. So still a form of conditioning work. But yeah, that's kind of the difference. If it's power, I'll typically put it, I'll front load it. I'll put it at the beginning. If it's conditioning, I'll move it to the end.
Okay. Yeah.
You're right about that.
That makes sense. Yeah. No, that's cool. Yeah. That's what I was kind of interested in. Cause like, yeah, sprinting it's power. Same with like when you said the kettlebell swings, you know, you're doing heavy kettlebell swings. That's not maybe okay, let's say this, like say I was doing kettlebell swings with the focus of conditioning and I was going lighter. Maybe that's something you could put at the end of a workout versus if you're trying to do the heavy, powerful swings, you put that at the beginning.
You could do that. You could do it as like a metabolic conditioning style finisher at the end of the workout. The same way that somebody would use like those battle ropes. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah. Fuck those things. Those are hard. Those are a nightmare. I'm pretty sure every fitness influencer is just like, quickly get the shot so I can stop. All right. Yeah, I'm gonna write this down because I'm curious. I want to try doing some of these different.
Okay, cool. Yeah.
Cool, man. Okay, what else did I want to get into? Oh, I've asked this to a lot. I've asked a lot of people this question. It's just something that I've kind of been thinking about recently. Is the you actually made a video? I think like Jeffrey made a video about it too. Was the I can't remember who made the video offhand, but it was like barbell versus biomechanics focused exercises. You know, these people that are trying to like not demonize necessarily, but they're trying to focus more on, you know, is this movement biomechanically advantageous as opposed to like the barbell movements and stuff like that. What do you think is what's your take on that? Just full send. Uncensored.
I think that it's not, I think it's more of an excuse than anything else. I think that if you want to work your way up to being able to do the barbell movements, you can do it. And I think that is going to yield the largest benefits in the long run. And that is going to create the largest base that you can lean on and transfer into pretty much anything else. It really isn't that hard, man. I have, hundreds of freaking clients that I teach how to do barbell exercises. It isn't that hard. So like, I'm not big on the people that try to take too much of that kind of concept. Okay, this isn't biomechanically optimal, so we're going to do whatever the hell else. The guy that keeps popping in my head, who you're probably referring to right now, is that Doug Brignall, I think is his name. Yeah. I'll be honest, I see people like that, and my bullshit sensor just goes, and I never even look at their stuff because of that. So I'm kind of talking out of my ass because I don't know with certainty what that dude in particular is advocating, but it has the feel of a used car salesman.
Fair enough. Well, what I've come to be concerned about is just people that come to they try to like come. Their message is, hey, everything we've been doing is wrong, and this is what you need to be doing. That's fair.
Yeah, that's attention grabbing. That's Joel Seedman type crap right there. Just everything we know is wrong. I found all this stuff. This stuff is right. So here, look at me. Mm-hmm.
You do a lot of reaction videos, and this is something I asked Jeffrey because he does those as well. Do you ever like you did a critique of Revival Fitness kettlebell swing and stuff like that, but you did it like you didn't attack the guy.
No, I try not to be. Sometimes it gets away from me, but I try not to be too big of an asshole unless I think that the person themselves,
unless it's vegan gains, he deserves. He deserves it all.
Yeah, I mean, come on, man.
But it's just like the whole. There's a lot of like people reacting to each other and calling each other out on YouTube.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering, what do you do to kind of make that not super negative? Like what's your code of honor, I guess?
Again, I tailor it to the person. If I think that the person is overall has good intentions versus not necessarily so good intentions. And obviously there's going to be some bias there because the filter is running through me, but that's kind of how I try to do it. And the more good I think you're doing, the nicer I'll try to be. Obviously I'm not perfect either, but the one thing that I try to do, regardless of whether who the hell I'm critiquing or whatever they're saying, is I try to provide value in that video. So I'm not just going to go out there and say, oh, this is wrong and this guy's an idiot. I'm going to go out there and say, okay, I disagree with this, but here is what I think is something that's potentially better. So I always just try to provide value. That's really my main thing. If I don't have anything valuable to add, then there's no reason for me to be making the video in the first place.
Yeah, you're not just going to make a video just to get clicks and subscribers or whatever.
Essentially.
Cool, man. Yeah, you recently did a reaction on Mike Israetel.
Yes.
And you're talking about like the bro training still works for naturals. That's something I want to get into because there's like a big debate right now, like natural versus enhanced training. What do you just want to kind of like clarify your thoughts on that?
In what capacity?
Like the fluff and pump work or the more isolated movements versus training for strength with the compounds as far as with the goal of hypertrophy.
Right. I think it goes back to kind of what we were saying in the beginning, where that strength base is going to create a foundation that you can use forever. So there's no reason not to, in my opinion, not to take 1, maybe 2 years at least building up that foundation. It's what's going to support you for the rest of your training career. And even guys like Mike Israetel did that, regardless of what he may be espousing now. He built up an incredibly large strength base. I think somebody in my comment section told me he could overhead press 275 for 8 reps. I mean, that's insane. That takes
strong boy.
10, 15 years to get to that point. That's crazy. I can't even fathom that. I just want to hit 225 for 1, That's a crazy strength base. So again, building up that strength base is always going to be very important. It's going to be the support system for the hypertrophy that you want down the road. That's something I alluded to earlier with myself. But you don't have to go all in on that. I'm not saying go max out. No one has to max out ever. The only reason you have to max out is if you want to max out, right? Even if you want to build as much strength as possible. You don't ever have to do a single rep in your life if you don't want to. You can get all the same strength building benefits.
That's kind of where I'm at. Like I don't really feel the need just to do a 1 rep max kind of thing, but
right.
I do want to like we said, there's certain things you do, strength training, it's correlated with there's a correlation between strength and hypertrophy, but it might be more advantageous to hypertrophy to train in the 8 to 12 rep range or whatever. But if you're training in lower rep ranges, that's going to bleed into your hypertrophy training. So it's just it's it's nuanced, a little bit complex, but at the same time, not really. It's like the stronger you get, if you're working in the, 5 to 6 rep range, that's obviously going to improve. Well, I would say it would improve your 8 to 12 rep range work.
It is going to improve it.
It is going to improve.
Is if all you ever do is 8 to 12 reps or 12 to 15 reps or whatever, if you only work in those higher rep ranges, you're eventually going to hit a ceiling that is going to be very difficult to break through. That's going to be very difficult to progress through. If you come down a little bit, if you work a little bit closer to the ceiling in terms of intensity, then you can push past it. So then kind of what you were saying, you go back into the higher reps, all of a sudden it's fluid again. All of a sudden you're progressing again. So that's something that some people miss, especially I think the more they get into, okay, I am a hypertrophy guy. This is my thing. And then they only work in those high rep ranges. And again, if it's hypertrophy, if that's your only goal, you could probably never go below 5 reps if that's what you wanted to do. But I would encourage those people to spend some time in that 5
rep range,
not just 8 to 12, not just 12 to 15. And,
Yeah. So there's a tendency to think that you need to train like 1 to 3 reps in order to train for strength.
Right.
But if you're getting stronger in higher rep ranges, you're still getting stronger.
Yes, you are. And the primary difference is yes, you can't max out optimally if you've never practiced 1 rep or 2 reps or anything in that lower rep range. But the strength itself is still being built. The ability to produce that force is still being built. You just have to learn how to hold it all together in a max effort attempt. And that can only be accomplished by practicing max effort attempts. And that's kind of the main difference. And again, I just think I make videos, I see comments, and I see that people are like kind of missing that point.
It's so simple, yet it gets debated and made to be this very complex thing.
Right. Well, and I think that's part of the Western like block periodization has gotten demonized in recent history as being whatever, stupid, inefficient, whatever. But at least it sends you through different blocks, through different rep ranges with a different focus in each block. And ultimately you end up getting a taste of everything. And that can be very important. I think that, it got a lot of guys really fucking strong and really fucking big, and maybe people should stop dismissing it.
Yeah. And one thing, the whole biomechanics focus, isolating us, like targeting muscles really well. It's almost something that would come after you've built the base, right?
That's right. That's you're preaching to the choir, man.
Yeah. This is just something I've been thinking about a lot recently. It's like, well, I kind of fell for that. I'm like, well, I'm going to sit here and do this one-armed lat pull down.
Right.
Or I could get really fucking strong doing pull-ups.
Well, what the hell's the difference? Like, do you want to be doing this for, are you going to be jacked tomorrow? No, there's no world where that's going to happen. It's a process of 5 years, 10 years. What the hell's the difference if you spend that first 1 to 2 of them learning how to use the barbell, which is the foundation of the whole damn endeavor, and building up a little bit of strength there. If you only build a few pounds of muscle, okay, cool. You're twice as strong as you were when you started. Now go do the frou-frou shit, whatever the hell else it is,
Yeah, well, there's a lot of, like the stimulus to fatigue ratio and all these things. Like I think people, I think a lot of people overthink training. I've definitely fell for that and overthinking it. And I don't use RIR, RP. I don't use any of that shit. I just intuitively, like, I kind of like caveman training a little bit.
Right. I've been there.
Yeah. I'm curious. Like, what do you think of like stimulus to fatigue and all that stuff? Like,
I think there's value. I think especially as you progress through the ranks a little bit, you start to kind of want to think about that stuff a little bit more. So like I said before, what was I doing? I was squatting with a bar on my back every single day, and that didn't have the greatest outcome for me. So now what? I can do some barbell squats on Monday, and then I can do some belt squats on Thursday, so that the belt squat kind of has a higher stimulus to fatigue ratio. So I think it has value the further you move along through the ranks. But yeah, same with the RIR concept. RPE, I think is going to have more value just in terms of strength training in general, pure strength training. So guys who are interested in powerlifting, guys who are interested primarily in powerlifting. RIR as a generalized concept, I think could have more overall utilization because you kind of end up capping yourself less in each session. But unless you're a guy who has a tendency to kill yourself in the gym, probably don't need that necessarily. And that's kind of the other thing. It really depends on the individual. It depends on temperaments and personalities and all that good stuff.
Cool, man. Yeah, no, we got into a lot of good shit here. Do you talk about nutrition on your Insta or your YouTube at all, or not really?
A little bit, not too much. I don't, it's I consider it a pretty damn basic topic, and so I don't dive into it too much. I also just I don't find it that interesting, to be honest with you, so I don't touch on it too much. But did you have anything you wanted to ask?
Yeah, like as far as like bulking and cutting, like what's your kind of like dietary principles? And
I think it really depends on what we're trying to accomplish. If I really want to get big, if I got a skinny little teenager who wants to get jacked, then yeah, you got to eat more calories, man. There's no way around that. I think that a lot of guys, especially on the YouTube fitness community, are probably cutting when they don't need to be cutting. And I see that mentality kind of bleed over into some of the people who come to me. they want to get strong, they want to get big, but they're like, well, I'm cutting right now. And I'm like, well, why are you cutting? Cut. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, when I think of like an athletic, you're trying to be athletic. I don't necessarily think like sub 12% is a good idea for a lot of people.
Not necessarily. It depends. Like I've been really, really, really lean. I can't tell you the exact percentages, but leaner probably than I needed to be. But I didn't even really necessarily try to get there. Mm-hmm. In terms of my athleticism, it wasn't a hindrance. That was where for example, in 2018, if you go back and see some of those pictures, I was freaking peeled. That's where I was able to jump the highest. I had almost no body fat on me, weighing me down. So that's where I hit my vertical bar.
I guess it does depend on what you're trying to accomplish.
Yeah, I'm a bit, but I was weaker. My barbell numbers and my strength overall had tanked a pretty good bit. So now I'm fluffier. Those numbers shoot right back up, So it matters, but it is still going to depend on what the exact goal is.
Mm-hmm. Like for me, like I'm just shy of 20% right now. So I'm on the fluffier side for sure, but I don't feel like when I run around, like I don't feel like I'm out of shape. I used to think 20% was like super, super overweight. And for some people, maybe it is, but like as far as like an athletic body fat percentage range, that's kind of like the ideal. I guess it'll be different for everybody a little bit, but
different for everybody. And again, it's going to depend on the sport. It's going to depend on what exactly you're trying to do. A basketball player is going to be leaner, should be leaner than a lineman in the NFL, just for example.
Yeah, absolutely. Like these days, are you trying to gain weight? Or are you just trying to maintain? Or I'm curious.
I'm not holding it back. I wasn't really going out of my way to try to gain weight, but I wasn't stopping it either. Maybe my appetite just increased. I don't know, but I did gain a lot of weight.
Cool, man. Cool. Oh man, that's awesome. Yeah, we got into a lot of good shit here.
Yeah.
I'm excited to try to implement a lot of these things.
Cool, man. Yeah, hit me up if you got any questions about anything.
Yeah, absolutely, dude. Yeah, let's wrap it up. If you just want to let people know where they can find you, that'd be great.
Check out my website. It is EnkiriEliteFitness.com. Instagram, I think, is Enkiri_elite. And then I think my YouTube channel is the same thing. I think, let me check real quick. I don't want to get everybody wrong. I think it's youtube.com/Enkiri Elite Fitness. That is it. So yeah, youtube.com/Enkiri Elite Fitness. Instagram is Enkiri_elite, and then EnkiriEliteFitness.com. That's about it.
Man. How long have you been doing the YouTube thing for?
I mean, I put my first video up many moons ago, but I kind of really got started, I would say, making like real videos around 2019-ish. Got a little, it's been a slow grow from there, but I'm cool with it.
No, it's cool, man. Well, I really appreciate you taking the time to speak with me today.
Yeah, dude, had a good time.